Once again, you are welcome to my tutorial. So today I'll be taking you guys on how to accept input from users using form and saving it into your database. If you haven't learned or know how to connect to your database from your local host or from your local machine or from your VS Code, kindly refer to my previous videos. So now let's dig into this. Okay, I will start by, okay, as you can see, I've already written the code. This is what I commented, that where I wrote the actual code to save the details into the database, and this is my form that I'm using to accept details from the users. So now I will start all over again. I will take this out. Now if you write, let's first of all start by creating a form that the users will see and give us the details we need from them, right? If you do all back, you can see I'm accepting 3 input from the users. If you wonder how I did this, Control Z will undo what you just did. Simple. So we are accepting the name, the phone, and the email from the users. So we take this out. Okay, then we'll type doc. Now if you have an extension called, there's extension called, if you come to this side, extensions called tab 9. Okay, it's installed in mine. Tab 9 AI. If you have it installed and logged in your VS Code, then if you just type doc on your VS Code, you're gonna get the default structure of HTML. That is what this is, default structure of HTML. So now let me proceed. My form, I want to be accepting details. Should I just say user details, or let's just call it form. Now this is the title that will appear in the page we give it for. Now inside the body tag of the HTML, this is where we are going to be calling on our form. Now we have to first of all use a tag called head1. So this head1 tag is used to write a bold stuff for users to say, okay, this is what you are doing in this form, right? So the head1 is the biggest. We have head1 down to head6, so which is referred as head1, h2, h3. h6 is the smallest, while head1 is the biggest. So when I type head1 enter, it gives me auto implementation or whatever you call it, auto completion actually. So we write fill the form below. That being said, we move down. The next thing now is for us to start our form. Okay, now there are things you have to know in a form. The moment you open your form tag, inside the form tag you put all your input, right? So in the form you have to pass in some, should I say, parameters. It is accepting more than 2 parameters, and the most the ones you use constantly every day as far as you're using form are the action and the method. Now what is this action? What you put in this action is the link to the page where you want it to direct the user the moment they are done filling the form and click on submit. Now let's assume this is class, and after the user fill this form, I want to direct them to the page called register.php, where I will accept their details, process it, manipulate it, and put inside the database. So what should be here will be register.php. Do you understand? So by doing this, the moment they click on the submit button, I take them to this place, which is where I wrote the normal code that we accept their details and save it into the database, right? So but in my case, I'm writing the code in this same class.php file, which is what you see here. So what should be here will no longer be register.php, it will be class.php. You get, right? So after the action, we have what we call method. Now this method in form, or by default in HTML or global sections, we have the post method, the get method, the put method, the delete method. These are things you use to query the database or manipulate the database. So For the post method is when you are inserting something into the database. That means you are accepting from the user, you are putting it or doing whatever it is you want to do with it. That is post method. Then the get method is if you are querying the database, maybe getting something from the database, displaying stuff for the users and all of that. Then the update method is if you want to update details into the database. And same for delete, as the name implies, you delete something from the database. So now in our case we are accepting from the users, so our method is going to be the post method. I actually prefer writing in capital letter post, but it's same as the small letter post. So now you come into here, the next thing we are going to do is our input. Now we have our input. Now inside the input there are many parameters. There are type, name, placeholder, value and many of that. So the first input we are going to be giving to them to put in the details is the name, right? So we have first parameter type. Now what is this type saying? We are accepting name from them, right? So we have to specify that this input, all we need is text, so they don't come in and put in some random number for us as their name. By specifying text, they will not put number and it will not accept it even if they put number, right? So we have another parameter called name. Now this name here is used to identify this particular input. If you want to get what a user filled in this particular input, you call it by the name. That is what you use to identify each input, so you give each of them a name. Now what we are accepting from the user using this input is name, so we give it the name. Now the next parameter is what we call id. This id is usually used when you are writing a css code. If you are trying to design this page using css, it is either you use the id, the name you give it in id, or class, or class. You get it? So if you are designing if you are designing this web page using css, you'll be able to design this particular input by the id you give it here, or by the class it has here, either of that, but we are not using any of this here. Okay, so now the next input we are going to be using here is the next parameter we'll be using there is the placeholder. We have placeholder. Now placeholder, and there's another one called value. Placeholder and value seems to be the same, but there is a lot of difference. Now I will show you that when I show this in the browser. I will show you the difference between placeholder and value. Now the last but not the least I normally add is what we call required. Without this required here, a user will click on the submit button without filling this particular input, and that is not what I want, right? So after we request for name, we are requesting for what else? Let me get it from here. We need their name, their phone and their email. So the next thing input we need from them is their phone. Now in case of phone, the type should be number. So if we put text, they'll just type in text for us, but we need their phone number, not text, right? So we give it as number, that is the type. The name, we give it as phone. The placeholder is actually used in replacement of what we call label, right? So I will also there's no of me putting value. The value in the first one just to show the difference between value and placeholder, right? So after the placeholder we put required. I think that's all. Then the next thing we'll be doing here is another input for the email. The type is not going to be text, it's going to be email, because yes, that is what we are accepting. So they don't just put in a normal name for us without it being an email format, right? So the next thing is the name that we're going to use to identify it. We give it email and we put placeholder. Now I think that is all. Now we have to put in the submit button, right? You can either use a button or an input, but if you're using an input, the type is submit, and if you're using a button, the type is also submit. So now this submit button, we're gonna give it a name. and it will say save. Should we call it save or submit? Save, yeah. We say save, and kindly do not get confused on what I keep checking here. Ignore it. I'm gonna rewrite all of that. Just focus on this form, right? As I'm coding, kindly code along. So for the name, save, and I think that is all we need, right? um okay, so now let's check this out in the browser. Let's check it out in the browser. Okay, down to this place, localhost. Now I don't know if you've installed your XAMPP or tested it out on the browser. In a way, if your XAMPP is on and it's been configured in your system, if you type localhost, you are supposed to be taken to a XAMPP page. But now, for you to be able to access your project, if you type localhost, you do slash the folder name you created in the htdocs, which is inside the XAMPP folder, is what you are going to be calling. Like here now, you can see my folder name is php class, and this is what I'm working on, right? So I might have 3 or 10 folders in htdocs, but the one I'm working with is php class. So when I type localhost, I will now do slash php class, which is the name of the folder I'm working with, and then it doesn't end here. I will now do slash again, and then if you come down to this place, um php class, where is this class file located at? Is located at is located inside the file folder itself. So it will now be php class slash files slash class of php. Okay, class files, you can see it there. When I do enter, this is how it shows. Don't mind the connection established you're seeing here. As I taught you before in my last video, I will comment this out and I will refer to it later in this video. Let's skip that for now. So if you refresh, you can see, fill the form below. You see, now it doesn't look this good for me, so I will have to come here. There is a tag called break tag in HTML. We use it. BR tag. BR is break tag as well. BR. Now if you come now, it looks a bit better, but I need to give it a whole lot of space. Okay, so it looks more better. There is nothing inside to tell you that you're supposed to put name here, supposed to put this here, right? So I will come over to this place. The placeholder will be put your name. Let's say your name. Your name. So if you come here, check it, you can see your name here. Means you already know that you're supposed to put in your name. If I'm using label, I just put at the top of this input saying input your name or please put in your name. But if I don't want to use label, I could just put it inside this input. If you come, you already know that you're supposed to put in your name here, right? So now what's the difference between the placeholder and the value? Now if you can see the placeholder, I can't delete your name there, right? What I put, you can't delete it. But if I'm to put it, if I am to use value, your name, remove the placeholder because the two cannot be the same together, and then I do this, you can see I can delete it. So the difference between the placeholder and the value is that placeholder remains there, you can't delete it, but value you can. So value is not used in forms like this. Value is used whenever you want to edit, because for a user to edit whatever it is they've saved in the database before, you have to display what was already in the database so they see it and then remove it and put in the new one. So that is when you use value. Just take notes. Then when we come back here, we take out the value since it is not needed. Oh wow, what did I do? Input your your phone email. Okay, I think it looks better this way. It looks better. Now what is the next thing? You can see the fact that there is required. If I click on submit, it will not go. You can see this. Okay, so what is the next step? Accept the input from the users and process it within the PHP code. Now you might be wondering, please, what is this thing doing here? This line 3, line 2, line 3. This is used to display error. There are sometimes when there are some tiny errors that will appear in your code. It will not be showing in your browser. It will just be telling you unable to handle websites, 500 error, or errors like that. But when you put this, no matter what the error is, you will not see 500. It will show you what that error is, so you'll be able to tackle it. That's why I actually put this here. So let's just leave it like that. You could grab an idea from here too, right? So now the next step before we can proceed to writing code or querying the database or saving it to the database is our database connection, because you cannot query the database without connecting to it or knowing the particular database to go to. Now I told you the last time, you have to surely, I taught you guys how to connect your database. You have to surely know that, right? So my database connection file is inside the DB folder, and inside the DB folder you have the connection file, and this is what I did here. Now I connected it here, and then I checked if it is truly connected, show me connection established. If not, show me failed. So because I've confirmed it's connected, there's no need of echoing this. I will leave it like this. So before I proceed to writing my code, I have to include DB file here, the database connection file here, so I can easily and freely use this variable call, right, to interact with the database called form, right? I hope you get it. So now let's go back to the class. I'm closing up all this file so you don't get confused. This is the only file we're using. Okay, so remember to create your file so don't get confused. Should I uncomment? Okay, now let's write our code afresh. First of all, inclusion of the database file is being done. The next thing is if writing of the code to save it, to be sure they clicked on the submit button and you get the input they submitted and all of that, and save in the database. If I set, now this I set is used to check and confirm if truly they clicked on that submit button called save. Dollar underscore posts. Now do you know what is dollar underscore post? We are checking if they actually clicked on a form that has the method post and the input name is called what, save. If they actually clicked on it, that means this is exactly what they clicked on, right? So we now go and start getting the inputs here by their names. If not, it will give us an error. So the name of the input, we gave it save, right? If I set dollar underscore post save, I've confirmed that they clicked on the submit button. The next thing is to proceed to getting those inputs, right? What they gave me, I'm going to retrieve it here. First one is name. I will give it a variable name so I can easily call it. So how do I get this name they gave me, they put in that input? I will do dollar underscore post. This post varies based on the method you are using. If you are using the method here get, it will be dollar underscore get. I'm using post, so that's why I'm using post, right? Dollar underscore post. What is the name you gave that input? You know we gave it name, right? So we call it here. Now if you are wondering how my code keep getting autocomplete, is because of the tab 9 I told you I installed in the beginning of this video. So the next one is the phone. You can see it's already there. The next one is the email. It's also there. So after that, what is the next step? We have gotten the input, right? And we've confirmed they clicked on the submit button, and we have gotten what they saved for us. What is the next step? The next step is to proceed to saving it into the database, right? So now I will now write a code to say like what we did here is sacked into the database and all of that. Okay, so we now write a code and say insert. Should I use this method? Okay, my SQLi. Do not forget to put I. When we are using MySQL was as of years back, now they've put the I, which is improved. If you use without I, you must get an error. MySQLi underscore query, I will put the con here. If you don't put that con, you get an error, but that means you have to come back in the next line of code and do it. Insert into. Now, for you to query the database, saving into the data, you can see it's telling me table, meaning that I should put my table name there. For you to save into the database, you have to use the function called insert into. Now, after you write the insert into, what is the next thing? Put in the name of your table. Now, let me confirm the name of my table to avoid error. I'm going into the database called form, and the name of the table where I want to save these things, I think, is the details. Yes, details. Now I'll come back. The name of the table will be details. Sorry, I don't have to use autocomplete because I've forgotten you are still new to this. So now I'm inserting into the table called details. What is the next thing? Call out the columns in that table that you want to insert into. First one is name, comma. Second one is phone, comma. Third one is email, right? When I'm done, the next thing there is the values I want to insert into these columns. That is why it is called values. What do you want the values to be? Values. Then after the values, I open another bracket and then start writing the values that I want to be under these columns respectively. The first one here is name. In these values, if the first one that appears is email, if you put email to come and store under the name, it doesn't make sense. So it will have to be respectively. Now everything is already auto completed for me. Okay, I think I'm here to close the last one, right? Close. Something is definitely wrong. Okay, so what did I do here? The name of the column, the values, all the values that I want it to be under these values. That's what I'm inserting into them, because I'm inserting what they gave me in the input. Please kindly watch this code very well so you don't make mistake. So remember that in the values, in the columns, I do not put any single quote in them, but in the values there must be single quote. Without a single quote, you get an ultimate error, remember. And the error might not even should just be showing you 500 error until you put in this line of code which is showing the error instead of 500 error, right? So there must be a single quote in all of them, and it has to be 2. So now that I've done MySQLi underscore query com, I'm querying it using the connection to database. That means I'm telling the particular database to go into. If you check, I have many databases. If it comes here, it doesn't know my database. But if it goes into this con, it will now find the database I want and then insert into it. If it now goes into that database, it will now find the table details and insert into it with these columns, which it is inside the details table, and put in these values. Now I've told my database or my code what to go and do in my database. The next thing to do is I think I'm done. If insert echo saved successfully, else echo save failed. Okay, as you already know, in PHP your code must end with semicolon, else you get an error. Okay, so let's go back. If we get an error, we'll resolve it. Okay, now we put in the name, the phone number. You can see that when you click on the phone input, it shows you only numbers. You can't put in letter, not possible, because I gave it the type number. So 08080, maybe. Wow, I overput number. The email could be Ebuka, right? Saved successfully. When I come here, you can see a new entry here, it is saved. So this is basically a very simple way and simple method of inserting your details into the database. Remember to do a database connection. This is it. And when you connect it, check it and make sure to include it here. Now I'm using dot slash db because you can see that it is above my files folder, and I need it inside the file inside that is inside this files folder. So I have to do a dot slash to go back, to come out of this my folder and go to another folder and look for the db folder, right? If it wasn't inside this db folder, I will just do dot slash the connection dot php file. But it's inside the folder, I have to locate it inside that folder and do a slash and call the name. Remember that. And this is it, and this is basically how to insert into the database. So I hope I was able to help you or resolve your issues. If you in any case you need a tutorial that I have not touched or yet to touch, please kindly comment here and I will attend to your comments. Thank you very much.